have more on Stanford's recent additions in just a bit, but one more headline. The #1 player in the class and Georgia quarterback commit is heading to the Peach State sooner than expected. Dylan Raiola will play his senior season at Buford High School. He'll play alongside fellow five-star and dog targets KJ Bolden and Edric Houston. So to talk more about this, let's welcome in our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, for the Wiltfong Whiparound. And Steve, there are kind of two sides of this. First, what it means for Raiola, and then how it could impact the recruitments of both Bolden and Houston. So what's your read on how this move will affect both of those aspects?
Well, for Dylan Raiola, it's exciting because he's going to get a chance to play his full senior year, Emily. He was facing a potential 5-game suspension in Arizona because of transfer rules out there as he was making the move from Chandler High to Pinnacle High. And with him committing to Georgia, it's an opportunity for him to get to the Peach State early, play against a terrific high school schedule, and also be nearby Athens, where he can get over there and spend time with Kirby Smart and Mike Bobo. Conveniently, he was already there earlier this week. So big for Dylan Raiola, in my opinion. And then for recruiting purposes, obviously, I think Dylan Raiola is one of the most personable recruiters in the class, one of the guys that if you were to ask prospects who they want to play with in college, he would be on that short list. He already has a really good relationship with KJ Bolden. I like Georgia's position for KJ Bolden. He's coming off a fantastic official visit to Ohio State, a real needle-moving one where my confidence in Georgia's position has gone down, but I still think I ultimately like the Bulldogs there, not sleeping on the Buckeyes. He was at Florida State this week, Alabama this weekend, and then Edric Houston. I think that Georgia's got work to do there, Emily. I really like my crystal ball forecast in favor of Ohio State for him. He's at Alabama this weekend with KJ as well. I think Georgia's got work to do there if they want to make a move with the coveted in-state defensive lineman.
Man, what a win for Kirby Smart to get a recruiter at that prolific high school all fall long. Yesterday, you entered a 5-star crystal ball for wide receiver Micah Hudson. Now, you have picked him to stay in the state of Texas, but not the Longhorns or the Aggies. You like the Red Raiders. What effect would reeling in a guy like this have on Joey McGuire and Texas Tech?
Well, we've talked about Micah Hudson and Texas Tech's position on several whip-arounds before. They've been one of the main players in this recruitment for a long time. Our colleague over at Horns 247, Jordan Scruggs, was talking way back last spring to keep an eye on Texas Tech. And our other colleague, Mike Roach, also logged a crystal ball in favor of Texas Tech here to land Micah Hudson. And I did a story on him earlier this spring where he just talked about the culture at Texas Tech, the connection he has with every single coach on staff from Joey McGuire on down. It's a place that he feels like he can be himself. They beat the Longhorns last year. They got an exciting style of offense. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the state committed in Will Hammond. It's a program that seems like they're on an upward trajectory, a lot of excitement around it, and they're one of the favorites for arguably the top prospect in the state.
Our colleague Jarrett Johnson of Inside the Red Raiders has a great story up right now about how Joey McGuire is doing things a little bit differently, and it's all kind of about kindness and how he's treating these recruits. So go check that out. It's been a bit,
Emily,
I guess. What?
Emily, speaking of some of those recruits, they're trending for Isaiah Collins, Peyton Morgan, Malika Square, Dante Carter. Those are all in-state DBs that Texas Tech trending on the crystal ball for as well.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be working what he's doing so far early on in his tenure there. It's been a bit since we've talked about Charles Lester, but the #4 recruit in the country is inching closer and closer to his July decision date. You have a crystal ball in for the Seminoles at this point, so what's the latest with him?
Well, Florida State, the nation's number 17 ranked recruiting class right now. He's arguably their top target on the board right now, was back in Tallahassee this past weekend, and I've never felt better about where Florida State stands with Charles Lester than I do right now. I think they're the absolute clear team to beat. Georgia, Alabama, some of the other programs that he's looked at during his process. But Florida State, his relationship with the staff, the amount of time he's been on campus over there, I think they're clearly the one to beat. He's got a decision date for July, and I think it's just the build up now to a big time commitment for Mike Norvell and company.
All right. Meanwhile, right now, Notre Dame is the crystal ball favorite for four-star offensive tackle Guerby Lambert. He visited earlier this month, but since then, he's taken trips to both Ohio State and Boston College. So where are you leaning in this apparent three-team race?
Yeah, our guy Tom Lloyd put that Notre Dame pick in back in November, and the Irish are certainly at the top of the list here for Guerby Lambert, who took his official visit the first weekend of June. Still continues to have regular dialogue with the Irish staff. He wants to be an engineering major. I think he likes the small class size at Notre Dame. Certainly, the tradition on the football field and their offensive line pedigree. I think they got some serious competition here. Boston College, the opportunity to stay close to home. They have a new engineering program there at the school. Coach Halfley and company have done a really good job of building a rapport with him. And then Ohio State, don't sleep on the Buckeyes here. They had them on campus this past weekend, and all the returns are strong from what I'm hearing there. Justin Fry has a lot of connections to the area with his time at Boston College. Same goes with head football coach Ryan Day. I think that those guys have the trust of the coaching staff over there at Catholic Memorial High in West Roxbury, Massachusetts. And this has become a real tight recruitment here down the stretch. Notre Dame certainly has a chance to add him to a class that ranks number 5 nationally, but Ohio State sitting there at number 4. He's one of their top overall targets, and then it would be a monster pickup for Boston College. I could still see this one going a couple different ways.
Don't worry, Steve. We never sleep on Ohio State. Before we look at a few big visit weekends on the horizon, we have to discuss what just happened in the Swamp. Since the weekend, the Gators have now received 7 commitments in the 2024 class, highlighted by the 5-star edge in Jamonta Waller. How can Billy Napier continue to build on this hot streak?
Well, I think that when you look at some of the targets that they're in on moving forward, they're still swinging at Jeremiah Smith. And when I spent some time with Jeremiah Smith at the Elite 11 final / overtime OT7 finals in Los Angeles this past week, I took away that I think it's going to be extremely tough to pull him away from Ohio State. He said his school is going to have to prove that they can develop him into a first-round draft pick. And when I asked him which school after Ohio State he thought could do that for him, he said it was the University of Florida. LJ McCray is a major defensive line target for the Gators moving forward out of Daytona Beach, Florida, Mainland High. He was just on his official visit to Georgia. I think this could be shaping up to be a Florida-Georgia battle. You certainly still have Miami and Florida State and Auburn in the mix. But Florida, you look at this recent run of recruiting wins that they've had, and they're beating powerhouse programs. They're beating programs that are competing for national championships. That's where they want to be. And LJ McCray and Texas A&M commit Dalen Evans. Those are 2 more major targets on the defensive line. That is a position room that they're going to continue to attack until they get to a championship level. And LJ McCray and Dalen Evans are 2 more that they're absolutely in the thick of it moving forward as they try and add on to a class that currently ranks number 3 nationally.
Some interesting wins for Billy Napier, exactly what Florida wanted to do in switching to him as the head coach. Still waiting for results on the field, but this will certainly help the recruiting department. Well, sticking in the soon-to-be extinct SEC East, Knoxville is the place to be this weekend. Tennessee hosting 3 5-star prospects, Elijah Rushing, Jordan Ross, and Mike Matthews. The Vols now have a top 10 class, but how do you feel about their chances to add to it after this weekend?
Yeah, looking to finish in the top 10 for a second straight cycle, Emily. Mike Matthews is one. We've had Tennessee as a team to watch on Whiparound for a while. Certainly Clemson, USC have given him a lot to think about on recent official visits. He was just at USC this past weekend for what was a massive recruiting weekend for Lincoln Riley and company. And he was at Clemson the first weekend of the month. Georgia's been trying to climb up in this race as well, but Tennessee well positioned. I think they're at or near the top. I think this will be his 3rd time on campus this calendar year. He was there for the win over Alabama. His family likes it. He loves the offense. And so I think Tennessee's in a good spot already coming into the visit for Elijah Rushing. We like Oregon right now on Whiparound. But Tennessee's a program that I think could make a move with a really strong visit this weekend. And then Jordan Ross is the 5-star edge from Birmingham, Alabama. When he visited Georgia a couple weekends ago, we talked about on the show that we thought the Bulldogs made a major move. And I do think that in the moment of that visit, that Georgia was very exciting. But I think since the dust has settled, and talking to him after that Georgia visit a couple days, he told me that Tennessee was the one to beat. So I know Florida is still very much in it. He was at Texas this past weekend, but Tennessee's been one of his favorites his entire process. And I think that they are also in great position going into this recruiting weekend. They had Williams Nwaneri on campus last weekend, the 5-star defensive lineman from Kansas City. So if they can add Matthews, Jordan Ross, and Nwaneri, and then Elijah Rushing would just be a bonus. But those 3 5-stars I just mentioned, that would be as strong a close as any program in the country to the 2024 cycle.
See what happens there. We got one more East team to hit on, and that's South Carolina. Shane Beamer will get his shot at a 5-star edge in Dylan Stewart this weekend. They're also hosting top targets and 4-star athletes Jonathan Paylor and Daniel Hill. So what's the latest headed into this important weekend?
Yeah, so Dylan Stewart's coming off his official visit to Ohio State and got to spend some time with Chase Young on campus. Larry Johnson is kind of a legendary figure, talking to people that spent time with Dylan Stewart and his family. His mom really likes Larry Johnson. That's a place that they feel Dylan could develop into the best version of himself. But South Carolina and Miami are 2 programs that I just refuse to sleep on in this recruitment. We pegged Miami as the team to watch or the team to beat coming out of his official to Miami 2 weekends ago. I think Ohio State has firmly given them a lot to think about, but South Carolina, they've been in this one for a long time, and they're trying to do what they did with Nicholas Harbor last cycle, although I think Dylan Stewart is someone that's going to come off the board much earlier than Nicholas Harbor. But South Carolina, they've done a great job recruiting Dylan Stewart throughout his process. He's pointed to Sterling Lucas and his pedigree. And certainly likes the trajectory of the program. Jonathan Paylor is one that I could certainly see ending up at South Carolina. They've done a fantastic job recruiting him to date. Coach Justin Stepp leading the charge there. He was just at NC State this past weekend. He's been to the in-state program a ton over the course of his recruitment. Maryland and North Carolina, some other contenders, but South Carolina has prioritized them early. They're going to have a great shot to land him. And then Daniel Hill is a 6'1", 220-pound, ferocious type running back. I think he's got all SEC written all over him on the next level wherever he decides. And he's coming off another visit to Alabama this past weekend. There's a lot of buzz about the Crimson Tide right now for Daniel Hill, who was trending South Carolina for much of his process. So South Carolina serve. We'll see what they do with it this weekend. He's a guy that they absolutely covet at a big position and need for them as they get this program back on track.